I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we're going back to our data engineering playlist, and we're going to look at part maps. And these are used in manufacturing or anywhere where there's what's called a self-joining table, where you have a whole bunch of, in this case, parts in one big table, and in each row of the table you have a part number and the parent part number for that part. But when you go and look at the parent part number in the same table, you'll find that that also has a parent, and so on until you have many levels of parts. And so the big challenge for data engineering is how do we take that self-joining table and give ourselves a nice list of, when I say, hey, part X, I want to see all the parents for that part, and in a list, so that I can get the hierarchy of that particular part. And this technique is used in all kinds of industries that have some hierarchy in them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our part map. Once we have it, we're going to use recursion to get it, and then we're going to pivot that part map so that we can put it out into a different format, so that we could get, say, a list of parts with all of their maps. And that's very, very handy for things like Power BI or Tableau when you export into any kind of analytics software, so that you can show the hierarchies. And so without further ado, let's get to our hierarchical part map in SQL Server. Interested in one-on-one coaching or help on your project? Make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is in the description. Okay, so I've created a part table here, which is similar to what you might see in a manufacturing system. They usually have part numbers with part revision, and then I've got a parent part number and parent part revision, and a part name. And that's kind of the pattern that you would see in most systems that use a rev system. So the part number together with the part rev is what makes it unique. And as you can see, this here is my wing assembly part number, and it has no parent. But you can see the frame belongs to the wing assembly, and then belonging to the frame, because that's AAB, you can see it has a rear flap and a top cover, and those two things, I'm just making this stuff up. It's very, very simple example. Those things also have a number and a revision, and when they join to each other, that's what you see with the parent part number there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, for any part in there, if I just give you a part number and revision, tell me what its map is all the way to the top. So if I do a select on that table I just created, this is very similar to what you just saw. Now we can actually see our table, and we want to see for any part in here, if I say, hey, I want to get one of these parts, I also want to see all of the parents in a list. And so seeing AAC 995 has a parent of 994, has a parent of 993, has a parent of 993 has a parent of 224, AAC 224, and AAC 224 has a parent of AAC 223. And so I got to find AAC 223, and that has a parent of AAC 222, which jumps up a couple of rows because that's where that row is, or that part is. And then it goes to AAB 111, and then AAA 111. And so as you can see, that's a hierarchy that's built into this table, and that's called a self-join. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use recursion to basically give us in one shot, in one statement, all of the parts for a particular part. So we're going to specify a part, and so in order to do that, we're going to declare a part number as a variable, and later on we're going to take this and we're going to create it all into stored procedure so that you can just do it with one line and input any part number. But we're going to hard code it for now. And we're going to say declare part number as an nvarchar equals, we're going to look for that AAC999995 part. And we're also going to look for the part revision, since each part has a revision. So if there's a newer build of that part that's being used in an assembly, then it'll have a B or a C. In a lot of cases it might be a number, it might be revision 1 or whatever. But usually there's a part number and a revision in manufacturing. And so what we're going to do here is, once we've got our part number and our revision, we're going to create a recursive CTE, and I'm just going to call the first part of this map. As you can see there, and it's going to have a part, a revision, and a map order in it. And we're going to fill that with select our part number as part, and that's the part that you see there in the recursion. So it's going to populate that. I'm going to put our part rev as rev, and that's again, that's going to tie back to our recursive CTE here. And then map order 1 as map order, and that's going to start the map at number 1. Because what we're going to do is we're going to increment this for each time that the recursion goes. So we'll say that's from our MFR parts, and where our starting part, our part number is equal to our starting part, which is part number, and the revision is equal to part rev. And that's going to give us our starting row, and then we're going to union that all together with all of the parents as we go up. So that's our starting point. Is going to have that AAC995 part in there for revision A, and that's where we can continue on. So we'll go ahead and we'll do a union all, and we're going to select, in this case, we're going to select the parent part number and the parent revision number from the MFR parts table, and also we're going to put map order +1. So each time it unions, it's going to increment that map order field, and that's going to help us to keep our order of our list when it comes out, and so that we can also sort the list without screwing up the order that this is done in. So I'll just put those indent those, and away we go. So we're going to go from MFR parts, and then I'll give that an alias MFP, and we'll join that with map.part and map.rev. So the values of the previous one are going to be put in here, and then we're going to select the parents, which will become the current ones, which will look for the parents, which will become the current ones until the recursion is done, and it doesn't have any more levels that it can go to. And so we're going to join that on the part number and the rev, and that's going to give us a nice recursion. Now I should note that there are 100 levels, at least on the SQL server on Azure, or I should say Azure SQL that I'm using. There was a maximum of 100 levels of recursion that you can do. So if you have more than 100 levels deep of parts, which would be very rare, then you might need to find another method, but this will definitely do it for a tree of 100 levels of depth. And on the end there, I'm going to say where the parent part number is not null, so it'll stop. When you do recursion, you have to make sure that you know that it will stop somewhere in the process. Otherwise, it will continue on forever until your program crashes or it gives an error. So I'm just going to say select star from map so we can see what we got so far. And as you can see, it starts with our AAC995, and then it goes up a level. In this case, it's reverse order because we're going up from the bottom. And so It goes all the way up until we get to the very top, which was 8 levels deep. And you can see that bolt or whatever it was, I think it was a snap cover or snap. It started there and it belonged to something else and it went all the way to the top. But what if we want to see our list we could just say reverse order, which would be one way of doing it, and to give us the list from the top down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another CTE that will give us the same thing except in the order that we want, with the hierarchy from 1 to 8 going the other way, so that we've got what we want to see there. This is actually pretty simple. All I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort it the way that we want, so that'll be map order descending, and then I'm going to add a row number onto it, which is kind of a simple way of just ordering it the way that we want, and then putting the number of the row into a field, and I'll just say row number over, and I'll say order by map order descending, and that's going to give us our hierarchy position starting from 1 at the top with the the wing assembly, which was the top, and that should give it to us here. So if I select star from PMAP, what do I get? Let's see here. Okay, so there we go. Now I've got hierarchy position, which is the way that I want. Starting at the very top, as you can see, that was that wing assembly that we put in there, and then the next one down is all of these guys till we get to the part that we wanted to see the hierarchy for, and so that makes it very, very handy to see that, so we can go and look at all of our different parts in here. 223 was one of them. So if I grab that one, if I want to look at a different one, then I can plunk that in there, and you can see this one's only 4 levels deep. I wanted to see the detail of this particular part, and it was 4 levels deep, and there's the hierarchy and all of the parents going up. So that's all fine and dandy, except when we pivot this eventually, we want to have a standard list of columns, because we're going to hand this off to Power BI or Tableau or whatever, and we want to make sure that all of the levels are represented if they have data in them. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another recursion just to give us a list of 1 to say 10, and that's going to give us a list of 1 to 10 so that we can have a list that always has 10 rows in it. If, say, we know that our manufacturing system only supports 10, like I said, you can go up to 100 recursion levels on at least with SQL Server, but in this case 10 levels deep, it's going to give us that list of 1 to 10, and then the next CTE that I'll do is I'll just select our list from ORD, that's 1 to 10, and then I'll just left join it to our current part map on the hierarchy position, and that's going to give us a nice list of 1 to 10. And if there happens to be a part number on that level, then there will be a part number that will show. Otherwise, it'll just give a dash to say that there's nothing in there, because we're going to concatenate our part number and revision together now so that it's a little bit easier to read. You could keep these separated if you wanted to. I'm just doing this just for fun. So I'll do a concatenation. I'll say our part and a dash and the revision together to show, this is the the spot in the hierarchy, and this is the part and the revision, so we know what that is, and that's going to give us a nice list that has parts on each row that where there's a part in the hierarchy. So if I go select star from thin, our final one here, then you can see there's our 1 to 10, and you can see there's only 4 levels here with you know, the starting from AAC223, which is the one that we wanted to see. So I know at this point, if you're still watching, you wanted to see the pivot, because what if I wanted to pivot this so that I can get a nice set of hierarchy fields that I can use in Power BI, and that's exactly what we're going to show here. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select our part number variable as a part number field, and I'm going to select the part revision as the part rev, and then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of add some fields from 1 to 10 in our list here, so that it gets set up for our pivot. And so I'm going to say, you know, 1 or value 1 is going to be level 01, the field level 01, etc., all the way to level 10, and then I'll say from, and this is where we're going to start doing our pivot here. So we're going to select from our part table here, or our part CTE, I should say, called fin, our LV and part, level and part, and then we're going to go, we're going to use a pivot here. So we'll say as SRC as our source table, and then I'm going to pivot, and this is where we're going to grab our pivot. So we're going to take the minimum part number for each one. There's only one in this case, so for the pivot, and I'm going to I'll use 4, and then 4 LV, and then in, and I'm going to put our list of columns again, except this is going to be sort of all the way to the end here like we did before, and that's going to be very handy to create our pivot. So now we've got 10 fields in addition to our starting fields, and I'll say that as pivot there. So after all of that, we've got our pivot table there that comes out the end of this, and if I hit F5, I'm going to get our list here, and there you go. We've got our hierarchy from starting at the top level. So I selected part AAC223, and you can see that's the very bottom level, and then this gives the hierarchy all the way up, which is very nice for you know, for Power BI and other you know, Tableau and things like that. So if I grabbed a lower level part, or I should say further down in the tree, say AAC995, and I put that in as our part number, then you can see now it blows that part out into 8 levels, and you can see the hierarchy all the way up to the top, and that's going to be very, very handy and help you to navigate around where you want to go. So if I did, say, our flat bolt there, the AAD300, you know, that's going to give another outcome, which is 6 levels deep. That's a little further up, and that's that really helps with our using our pivot. So what if we wanted to take a look at making a procedure, because now we've actually created a really nice piece of code, and it'd be really great to put that into a procedure so that we can call it from wherever we are in our app. So I'll say show part map, create procedure, show part map, and that'll have arguments of part number and revision, and I'll say as, and then we can get rid of those 2 rows that declare our variable, because we're now going to pass that into a procedure, everything that we just did, which is really cool. So I'll just take a look there. Looks good. Hit F5, and this will give us commands completed successfully. So now we have a stored procedure on our SQL server in order to look up a particular parts map, and now we can just call it by saying, you know, execute, show part map, and then I'll do Control Shift R here, so that'll refresh our our worksheet so that it knows that show part map is there. I just did it. It takes a second, and now if I space off of that, the end of the name, it will give me, there we go, it'll give me the arguments, so I can, you know, I could have done it without doing that, but it's just nice to be able to do that. I'll grab a different part, say the cover snaps AAC994, which is 7 levels, I think, into the tree, and revision A, there you go. So that grabs the cover snaps. Now say if I wanted to grab AAC222, I can just plunk that in there too and execute that, and that'll give me, you know, that's 3 levels in belonging to those all the way up to the top. And we also have different revisions in there, so you could grab a number that has a different revision if it's included on an assembly, you know, that might have different revision on it, because not all the parts will have the same revision. So if I run it with A, we don't get anything because that part was not used, that part number with revision A. But if I put B in, then you can see, oh, it's on the 2nd level, and it belonged to the top level assembly, which was the wing assembly for that particular item. And so that's how you can do a part map in SQL Server. Hope you enjoyed today's discussion on how to do a part map in SQL Server. If you like what you saw today, please give the video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, click the bell when you see the bell, and if you have any questions or comments, put those in the comment section below. Have a great day, have a safe day, and I'll catch you next time.